Hello and welcome to another episode of The Kid Stays in the Podcast. I'm your host, Trey Cooper, and joining me today is...
Big Beluga Willie, the clown.
Big Beluga Willie?
That's me.
What does that even mean?
Honk honk. That's my clown name.
You said you had a great name, and I had high hopes.
That's really funny.
Big Beluga Willie?
Yeah. You don't like that name?
I just don't get it.
It's just a fun clown name. I was gonna say
I can't imagine a single clown that would be named Big Beluga Willie.
Big Beluga Bob. The clown.
No, Willie's better. Anyway, joining me today, of course, is Solomon Cooper. I'm not going to call you Big Beluga Willie.
Well, you weren't going to call me by any name I said.
And today we are going to be discussing the latest horror movie in apparently a franchise. We are going to be discussing Terrifier 2.
Not 1.
Yes, I have not, and full disclosure, I've not seen Terrifier 1.
We have not. Neither of us have.
I saw its Wikipedia page, so I could get caught up on it.
I didn't even say that.
I heard from many people that we didn't have to watch the first one to watch the second one.
The second
one went in a completely, I don't want to say fully different direction, but it went in a different direction. As far as this one has like some bizarre supernatural elements to it.
Mm-hmm.
For those of you not familiar with Terrifier, it's about they call him a killer clown, but he's not actually a clown. He is a
mime.
A mime. Yes, a killer mime, which is frankly quite a bit more original than a killer clown. But
he still is Art the Clown.
That's what people call him, yeah. And then I guess the credits call him that too.
Yeah.
But technically he's a mime. Anyway, Art was first introduced in a short film, part of it like a kind of an anthology series called All Hallows Eve, I believe. Is Damien Leone the director?
Damien Leone.
Yeah, Damien Leone directed a short segment. And he introduced Art the Clown there. Obviously, like a lot of young filmmakers, young writers, he had grand plans for this creature, this clown,
this mime.
And then he got some funding and he made Terrifier, which did really well at the festival circuit. It was known for being very, very gross, causing a lot of walkouts. Always good for a horror movie. And with this movie, he actually got to make the Terrifier movie that he always wanted to make, which included some supernatural elements. They really introduced the idea that Art the Clown is a supernatural being, whereas in the second movie, he was more like a generic slasher character, and that you just assumed he was a crazy person, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Or, a murderous person. Definitely this movie is better for the fact that Art is set up as some kind of bizarro world, version of a Cenobite. But yeah, so I really wanted to watch it. I was really excited about watching this movie. And we actually saw it just last night, so it should be fresh in our mind. Yeah, we went to the big old theater. We didn't wait for it to go on demand.
Went to see the pictures
and the moving picture show.
Mm-hmm.
Great place to see it, by the way. I will not lie, cover my eyes several times in this movie.
Do you know what I didn't do? Cover my eyes a single time. I loved watching the gore.
Well, now you sound like a psychopath. But yeah, I mean, there's not any real things that I think we need to get into as far as, themes or depth or whatever. I mean, some of those are in this movie, but why don't you just start us off with one of your classic patented plot synopses?
Oh, I'm so good at these. I don't even know why you do them. I think you should do it, just because mine are too good now.
Just go ahead.
Okay, so, there's a clown who's supposedly dead, but now he's back on the run, killing people again. And it's scary.
That was the worst one yet.
What?
But at least that one was short, so I'll give you that. So this movie picks up directly where Terrifier 1 ends. Again, like I said, I didn't see it, and you don't really need to because there's not like a lot of recurring characters or anything. It's a completely new cast.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But at the end of the original movie, The clown Art is beaten in the back of the head, his skull caved in, back of his skull caved in. He's taken to the morgue, and the big jump scare they always have at the very end of every horror movie.
Mm-hmm.
Right when the guy starts to do an autopsy, Art jumps up and attacks him. This movie starts exactly right there. Terrifier
It's
2.
a year later.
It doesn't say a year later.
It does. This is 2018.
Well, it doesn't say that in the beginning of that scene. Because it opens in media res, right? Like in the middle of the attack.
I think, yeah.
Not you think, you know.
I do know.
The opening scene is the guy
Yes.
who's about to do the autopsy
You're right.
stumbling around, bleeding out of his whole body.
Yes.
So no, it does not take place a year later. Now the plot of the movie may take place a year later, but the opening scene takes place 1 second later.
Okay.
And we watch Art very horrendously kill this coroner. And that's like the first 5 minutes of the movie. So you know immediately what you're in for.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
pretty brutal. Pretty brutal first kill.
really gross. He pops his eyeball out. He puts it in his thing. He puts it in his thing. He puts it in his own eye socket. He plays with it. He makes some jokes about it. He stabs the guy's face open. He breaks his face. He rips his brain out. I mean, it's full on.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy. It wasn't too bad though. I feel like I didn't close my eyes or anything.
It was pretty rough for me to just jump right into that. And look, this movie is about a family who, and me describing it is going to actually sound a lot more artful than how it comes across on screen, just because at the end of the day, this still is lower budget movie, and there's some amateur-ish acting, and he does get some great performance out of even some of the actors that are young and inexperienced, which I appreciate, and I don't want to knock any of them, but when I describe this, I think Solomon, you'll agree with me that what I describe is going to sound a lot more clear and concise than how the movie was able to really present it. But what we have is a family whose the dad is deceased. He was a comic book artist and he died. We don't know how at the beginning, in some tragic way. And his daughter is basically making a cosplay outfit of a character
that he created for her.
Yeah. And, the mom, she's a single mom. She's stressed out because her husband died. She's stressed out with her kids. And then the youngest son seems like maybe he's a little bit disturbed. He seems to be a little bit too into serial killers and, murderers and et cetera, et cetera.
Just death, horrible death.
Yeah. And the oldest child is Sienna, who's played by a new actress who I've never seen anything before. Do you remember what her name was?
I'll pull it up right here for you because I have show notes. Lauren Lavera.
Yeah. So she does a great job anchoring the movie. Even though I would say her inexperience still kind of does show sometimes, but for the most part, I think she does a great job anchoring the movie. And she plays a character who's obviously very deeply traumatized by her father's passing, and they were obviously very close, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
The problem is that most of these actors, what?
You went, most
of these actors aren't able to play the nuance that's required of them. There's in no way where the younger son ever comes across like he might be some kind of weird deviant. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It actually feels incredibly forced when the older daughter is like telling the mom that she needs to take more seriously how he's into serial killers or whatever.
It's still really weird though.
What?
Anyone saying any of that, I would still want them to go to see a therapist.
Anybody saying what?
All the things he was saying.
He wasn't saying anything that was that weird.
He talked about the Nazis, and then he was talking about all the serial killers, and he was going to dress up as a serial killer a year after it happened.
That's not that weird.
Still would send someone to a psychiatrist for that.
I think a young teenage boy wanting to dress up like... What's really funny is the line they said is like...
He's 12.
The mom was like, yeah, but he doesn't look like he's 12. The mom was like, people don't dress up like Jeffrey Dahmer or Charles Manson? And I was like, yes, they do.
They do?
Yes. Yeah, people dress up like serial killers at Halloween. Absolutely.
Seems too dangerous.
Also, he was dressing up like a killer clown. That's not that big of a stretch. Secondly, the thing you said about the Nazis was just like a known fact. That's not a weird thing to know.
It wasn't a known fact.
He wasn't like idolizing the Nazis or anything. He just randomly said one thing about them.
Well, just a bit odd.
Whatever. I thought that it was the movie.
And he's a 12-year-old, so that makes it even weirder.
If he would have come across even mildly creepy, then I would have agreed with the sisters saying anything. But he just didn't come across as creepy at all. Did you think his performance and him as a character, did you think that was creepy?
At first, yeah, I thought he was a weirdo.
Only because of what he was saying, though. I'm just saying the performance was not creepy. He was not playing a creepy kid.
No, he wasn't being a creeper. No.
The mom is incapable. I really feel bad for saying this because, again, I know this is like an indie thing and it's a big role for her.
It's so true.
But she was incapable of playing more than one emotion at a time.
No nuance.
Yeah. Do you actually want to go into that? Like why that so doesn't work for what her character's supposed to be?
Yeah, I'd love to. I'd love to go into why it doesn't work. So, yeah, my dad's just now said that she can only play one emotion. And it really doesn't work because, she's supposed to be like a single mother who's supposed to like be feeling all these things. I mean, like you have to be able to sympathize with her at least somewhat. But you can't see like that angry, but like you can't see that like that glossiness in the eye of like, but you know that she feels something behind it. She just seemed like kind of cold.
That glossiness in the eye.
Yeah, like that.
Like a dead animal or a fish.
Well, I mean like tears in the eye,
yeah.
or you feel that guilt. But you just can't see that from her. She just seems like a cold, distant, like abusive mother.
Yeah,
but then she'll like switch, like she's like bipolar or something, which isn't how bipolar works, but it's the only way I can describe it to people. She just seems like it just switches from being like super horribly harsh to like being sympathetic, but you can't really like forgive her because that's not what normal people do.
Yeah, like she's clearly supposed to be this like kind of haggard. She's worn out. She loves her kids deeply, but she's struggling. You know what I mean? And she doesn't have very much patience. But she can't play both the emotions.
Mm-mm.
So what she ends up doing is, like Solomon said, she ends up just switching back and forth between sounding nice to being so angry. And she's not a very good actress. Let's just be honest.
Yeah.
Like, so she's not very good anyway.
She looks like a mom.
Yeah. But
the end.
But yeah. And so she'll switch from being like, also she never seems haggard when she's being nice, right? The dialogue doesn't support her very well either. Let's just say that. Like, she's not like, hey guys, I'm sorry I snapped last night, but between having to work 2 jobs and your dad dying, like, I know this is really on the nose. Like, yeah, but it's been a lot. Like, the dialogue doesn't give her anything, right? So everything would have to be acted.
Yeah.
So instead, she's just like, she'll be like, hey, do you want to come down for dinner? And then her daughter will be like, I'm going out with my friends. And she'll be like, you ungrateful bitch. It's just like crazy. It doesn't work. It just does not work.
Mm-hmm.
But why are we spending so much time talking about family dynamics in a movie about a killer clown who horribly mutilates and mauls people? And I will tell you why. It's because this movie thinks that it's bigger than it is. It thinks that it's getting into the stuff that he really has not been able to get into in some of his grungier movies.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, we're left with a lot of self-indulgent scenes of family drama that simply don't work in any way.
Nope. And I feel like it could have worked. It could have.
Yeah, but maybe a bigger.
What are you saying? Are you having a stroke?
No, I was going to make fun of myself for saying bitter, but I was going to say a bigger budget maybe would have helped, having some more professional actors. I'm not really sure how much of this you want to lay at the director's feet, but I will say that Damien is also the editor of his own movie.
Oh, really?
And
that's a problem.
Boy, should he not have been.
Mm-hmm. That's a horrible idea.
I mean, it happens all the time. I think Quentin Tarantino edits a lot of his movies.
And I feel like that's all a horrible idea unless you're like...
No, some people do it and they're really great.
Well, I'm glad they are.
Maybe Tarantino doesn't edit all of his own movies.
I just feel like that's...
Robert Rodriguez does.
I feel like that's...
What?
Are you serious?
What?
Isn't he the one who sucked at making Boba Fett?
Yes, he is.
Okay,
Yeah.
well then, okay. I just feel like being a director, being an editor sounds horrible because I feel like all your movies will be too much.
Too long?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's always that impulse, but I
It's
think that some people
all
can
my
do it.
scenes are perfect. I don't need editing.
That is that's what happened in this movie, for sure. I mean, this guy was trying to make an epic slasher movie, right when it hit all the notes, and some of the notes are just not his strong suit. Anyway, it's time to take a break.
We'll be right back.
We'll be right back, and we'll finish our discussion and get into the actual flesh of the movie.
Dark.
Frozen heroes. Gonna tell you about Frozen heroes. Gonna tell you about.
Hey, I'm Zach,
And I'm Mike.
and we have a fantastic new podcast to tell you about. Bros, Foes, and Heroes. It's the two of us looking into the world of comics, breaking down some characters that you may have never heard of, and some that are just absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, so Zach comes up with a character each time, and I go into it just completely blind. I don't know who this person is or what their abilities are or anything, and basically I guess we kind of go over their origin story and just some of the ridiculous stuff that maybe, especially Golden Age stuff.
Oh, Golden Age stuff is always the best, and we will make sure to highlight all of the shenanigans and just absolute weirdness of everything.
Yeah, that's right. So subscribe today and follow us on Instagram at Bros, Foes, Heroes.
And if you don't, I know where you live. Not really, but please subscribe.
Frozen heroes. Gonna tell you about Frozen heroes. Gonna tell you about.
911, what's your emergency?
Do you hear that? It's coming from the house.
It's coming from inside the house? Do you mean? Could it be?
The Poltergeist. New from Rogue Media. Two haunted hotties talking about haunted places. Every episode, we dive deep into the darkest places and give you a bit of history.
We're getting spooky in all the right places.
You've gobbled your last ghoul.
Follow along for the craziest and spookiest stories with Debbie's Dark Tourism. The Stanley Hotel,
Winchester House,
The Alamo,
Hotel Monte Vista.
and more spooky places. Find us at _Poltergals. POLTERGALS.
Look over your shoulder. It's us,
The Poltergals. Wherever you consume the podcast, you can find us there.
Welcome to One Star Rewind, a new podcast about those dreaded one-star reviews that every business owner hates to receive, but yet every customer loves to read. During this podcast, we will peel back that one-star review to better understand how it happened, when it happened, and what the business owner is doing after receiving that one-star review. This podcast will be about love, hate, and laughter. On One Star Rewind, we will meet with real business owners who will tell their stories and how they do rely on reviews for their business. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or download us at roguemedianetwork.com. Please subscribe, but only rate and review for not a one-star review. Join us each time for a new review and a new story.
Welcome back to the Kid Stays in the Podcast and our discussion of Terrifier 2.
Okay, so let's get away from the family drama stuff and that the characters aren't all that fleshed out. Blah, blah, blah. It's a killer clown movie, right?
Big killer mime movie. Yeah.
Nobody cares about that stuff anyway. So let's.
That's why you're here. That's why you're watching the movie. You're not watching it for the family drama.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. This movie, if this movie would have nailed all those aspects, then
Perfect. Good. By all means.
yeah. But it didn't. So unfortunately, we're left with a lot of stuff. And this is, I think, we should bring up the big giant bloody elephant in the room, and that is
being British, or is the elephant actually bloody?
Yeah, it's not being British. This is a slasher movie about a killer mime who horrendously and in such insanely exaggerated ways murders people. And it is barely shorter than like Schindler's List.
That's really funny.
This is a 2 hour and 15-minute long movie. And the last slasher movie that I saw was even close to that long was Halloween Ends. And you know how we felt about that. And even Halloween Ends, I think, had a decency to be just about 2 hours long.
Decency.
So this movie is just too long in general, which makes it to where the scenes that don't work really should have been pulled out. But let's stop sounding so negative. What did you think about Art the Clown as the villain?
Dude, Art the Clown, that is a villain if I've ever seen one. Like, the actor, you know his name?
Yeah, it's something Thornton.
That's all I know about his name. I got you. David Thornton. He is just crazy. I feel like he makes up for, I think he stole all the acting from that lady, because he's having to do so much. And he doesn't even get to say any words.
Yeah, he's like not like Freddy Krueger.
He's so fun. He's so funny. He's funny and like genuine, and everything feels so clowny. And he's a crazy psychopath, but he's still like a clown.
Well, I think the thing they did that was correct is that he isn't a crazy psychopath. He's something. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But he's like some kind of supernatural thing, but that is a mime or a clown or whatever. And I mentioned this when we were watching it, right after we watched it. The thing I loved about him is mostly killer clowns are just slashers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So if they do anything clownish, it's just like as a joke. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they'll honk their nose or make you a balloon animal like in It. But he is fully
a clown.
A clown and a mime. So he's doing all the material and he loves it.
And it's funny.
Yeah. And I want to be clear, when Solomon says it's funny, this is not like late stage Nightmare on Elm Street Freddy Krueger where he's just making dumb puns. He's objectively funny, but also he's always scary.
Yeah.
Like, you know something awful is going to happen.
Yeah, because you're always unsettled by him, but it's just like what he does so much physical comedy, and it's great. I live for every second of it.
You live for every second of it. Well,
Lived.
What I also like about it is I love a good jump scare. You know what I mean? A good jump scare movie.
Mm-hmm.
Get me every time. But what I really like about this is there's not a lot of jump scares in this. There are some, but but the jump scares aren't usually about Art.
Yeah.
He comes in. He's not afraid. He doesn't hide in the shadows like Michael Myers and stalk in when nobody's looking.
He's not a nighttime character. He'll just walk around the daytime, live his life.
Yeah.
And commit crimes.
Yeah. He just walks in and like stalks the people openly.
Yeah.
And everyone thinks it's just Halloween, so no big deal.
Mm-hmm.
He does not care at all. And that makes it to where his scenes are kind of, it's refreshing how unique they are.
Mm-hmm.
So if a girl hears like, oh, a window broke, and she goes downstairs, Art doesn't come jumping out of the closet, grabbing her. You know what I mean?
He's making himself a glass of water.
Yeah, he just like walks over with his big floppy clown feet and gets himself a glass of water, and then he eats it.
Eats the whole glass. That'd be pretty funny.
So yes, Damien has created I would say, top tier villain here.
Yeah, 100%.
And I would much rather watch him make these movies where, yeah, they're a little bit low budget. The acting's not that great sometimes, but it's so true to its vision, because I kind of hate the idea of a studio getting involved. And then, like, what if the studio bought the rights to it, and then they let him stay on as a consultant, and they like hired the guy who made It or whatever, and they decided to make that version of the Terrifier? Would it be the same? I feel like it would
be the same at all.
I feel like it's generic.
This movie would not be the same at all if art was any different. I feel like this movie wouldn't be fun or good, and I would never watch it, and I would hate it. Because it would just be gross for the sake of being gross, or just be scary, which is not the same.
Well, part of, I think, though, what it works is not just art being in it. It's also the aesthetic of the movie. The movie feels like an 80s slasher movie.
Even though it's set in 2018.
Yeah, it's set in 2018, but it feels like an 80s movie. The sets are very 80s-ish. The microwave and stuff that they have in their house is very 80s-ish. Their costuming is. But more than that, it feels like the way it's shot, the film grain, the credits. And we're not talking about like a Stranger Things that's doing like some kind of 80s pastiche. This is like, feels like an actual 80s movie.
It feels like you're in the 80s.
Yeah, like, no. That's the opposite of what I'm trying to say. It doesn't feel like you're necessarily in the 80s. It feels like an actual 80s movie.
Yeah, I'm in the 80s watching this 80s movie.
I
went back in time and then watched a movie in the movie theater that's in the 80s.
Except for there's cell phones and stuff. iPhones.
Then what are you saying?
I'm saying it feels like an 80s movie in the way every single thing else about it, the way it's shot, the way it looks,
the way
it's acted, it is like a slasher movie that you would find on the bottom shelf of a Blockbuster video. You would see the case and you would say, "Oh, that clown looks freaky, let me get it." And then it turns out to be a lot better movie than you were thinking it was going to be.
What's that word called? Whenever it's like a time thing, but it doesn't make any sense.
Time capsule?
No. Like it's a literary device where it's like it's something from, let's say let's say an iPhone in the 40s or something, or like something it's kind of modern-ish, but it's still in a time period that wouldn't exist yet. It has a specific name. I'm gonna look it up.
No, not gonna look it up right now while we're talking. That's also like an internet thing.
It's a real word that I was taught in honors English. So keep talking.
No, I hate when you do this.
I know you love it.
No, I'm not going to just talk because then you're not listening to me, and you're just looking something up. And also, just so you know, Solomon is the worst user of Google in the world. He types in the worst word combinations. It takes him 47 years to figure out whatever it is that he's trying to Google.
Nope.
See what's happening?
It doesn't take me.
We only have 7 minutes to finish up this movie while you look up an idiotic term that nobody cares about. It has nothing to do with what we're talking about.
Okay.
This movie doesn't take place in the 80s, but happens to have cell phones in it.
I know, but the film grain is what is the thing. I know the word. I can feel it. It's called like a pneumacron or something.
You're a pneumacron.
It's a really good word. I would recommend people to use it, but I can't find it.
I recommend you learn it. Maybe you can use it next time. Anyway, so we are watching a killer clown slasher movie. We have a great villain. We have perfectly fine meat sacks to be, murdered. So
we have a great main character. I feel like our main characters are really good.
Yeah, main character is really great. They try and do something, and I don't care that we're kind of skipping around here. They try and do something at the end of this movie where they add like a prophetic, chosen one hero, and they add a whole supernatural element that I just don't feel like went anywhere. Unfortunately, I would love for it to have gone somewhere, but
just didn't
really feel like. Did you? I don't know if they ran out of money or
they ran out of money.
Kind of seemed like maybe they did.
It did feel like that. I don't know what would have been so hard about it.
Yeah, she has a sword that her dad gave her, and it turns like magic, and it heals all of her wounds. Like it goes full supernatural, but they do literally nothing with it other than heals her wounds.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's talk about the kills really quickly. What did you think of the kills in this movie?
So the kills were really horrible, and I watched every second of them, and I felt like within the first minute.
You just now said the first kill. You're like, oh, I was fine with it. I didn't.
It
think
wasn't that bad, but I instantly was like, this is not gonna be good for me.
Like emotionally.
Like physically. I felt like I was going to vomit every second. But I also loved watching it.
Okay, now you're just sounding like a psychopath.
Well, no, I mean like it was.
Who's creepy now?
No, it was fun to watch, but it was just like it was also like making me feel sick.
Yeah, it was really gross. Like it was so over the top that I would say it never got to the Rob Zombie or Texas Chainsaw Massacre level where it actually made me feel gross.
Mm-hmm.
The only reason I felt gross was because the movie was freaking 2 hours and 15 minutes long. So you'd just been watching it for too long. So you're getting tired, you're getting fatigued, your adrenaline's burned out.
Yeah.
But I didn't feel that like it's hard to explain because it was so over the top, but it was gross. I mean,
it was so gross. Like my throat is like getting that vomity feeling into the back of it right now, thinking about that horrible kill on that lady.
Yeah, so I'll give 2 kills real quick, just very quickly, so you get an idea of not just how gory it is, but how mean the movie can kind of be. But it's weird because it's always mean this weird tongue-in-cheek way.
Yeah, where it's like kind of funny, but you're still like, oh, that's really gross.
Yeah, so like there's a scene where he blows this woman's head off with a shotgun.
That was
blows
really
her
funny.
face open. It's very gross. Someone says it's very funny. You sound so much more psychotic than that little kid that you were saying sounded weird.
Well, no, I don't.
Because he was going to dress up like a clown.
A killer clown. And he was talking about Nazis. And he was talking about all kinds of murderous things.
He wasn't talking about Nazis. It's actually infuriating me that he said he's talking about Nazis. All he says was, he's like, did you know that the Nazis used to do experiments where they were going to inject kids' eyeballs to see if they would change color? That's one thing. Wasn't talking about Nazis.
Okay, it's so gross.
Whatever. It sounds like something that I would say.
They're at dinner.
They were at breakfast.
And that's something I would say also, but I'm just saying.
Anyway,
food time.
So he blows this lady's head off with a shotgun, so her face is like exploded. It's just like hanging in a bunch of floppy meat. And her son comes home, and he's like set her up at the dinner table with her head all exploded. And the clown's like serving mashed potatoes and wine, and then he starts like shoving mashed potatoes into her what used to be her face, like to feed her. She's dead, by the way. This is a corpse.
Yeah, so it wasn't like torture.
Yeah. And it's like it's at the furthest edge of dark comedy.
Yeah.
That you're like kind of you can't laugh, but you're kind of like, oh, ha, ha,
it's like awkward, uncomfortable laughter.
Yeah. And then you can do the other gross kill.
The kill that made me want to vomit?
Yeah, and then you have 1 minute to do it though.
What? I can't speed run how he does it?
Speed run it.
Okay, so I'll just give you the key details. He does a lot of slashing with like a little scalpel or knife or whatever, and then breaks her arm at the elbow.
And don't forget, he already scalped her.
Yeah. Breaks it off. The whole arm is apart. Then like throws it or something, and then grabs her by like where the bone was separated, and then rips it in half. So she just has like a limp arm because all the nerves are gone, and her bone is split in half. And then he keeps cutting. He cuts her face off, like rips her face off.
That's when he kills her.
Okay.
He scalps her.
He scalps her. Oh yeah, he scalps her. Yeah. He cuts like her forehead and then like rips.
Anyway, you don't do all these gross details. My point was he does all these awful things and then he leaves, and so she's like doing the classic.
She's trying to get to the phone, and we're like, okay, maybe she'll actually get something, and then he just like hops back into the room
like a gremlin. Like he's not like he never seems angry during these scenes, right? He just seems like he's like.
He just walks in like a little leprechaun. He's like, oh, look, I got some treats. And then he just starts dumping bleach and salt all over him and literally like pours salt in his hand and just starts rubbing it in her back.
So like literally this is a great example of the kind of meanness of the movie. It's calling attention to its own meanness, right? He's literally rubbing salt in the wound.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, I think that I can appreciate his desire to not kowtow to the censors, and he's going to do his unrated. He refused to go get a rating, right? He wanted to cut anything. But in this case, the truth is there's a much better edited movie in there.
Yeah.
This movie would have been, they could cut 45 minutes off this movie. I don't care if some of it is some of the gore. I'm not saying you have to make it like tame and let the movie be what it is.
Yeah.
But there's a good, easy 45 minutes you can cut off, and then you have one of the, I would say, one of the best slashers, 100% better than the new Halloween movies have been.
That's not even a...
It's set in Halloween. It's set at Halloween time. It feels more like a Halloween movie, just in general. Like, I don't mean Halloween the movie. I mean like a movie that you would watch at Halloween.
Yeah.
The much better Halloween vibes. You have an all-time killer, but at 2 hours and 15 minutes, this movie just feels too much like you were having to ride a roller coaster until you actually feel sick.
Yeah.
And I don't mean sick because of the whatever. I mean like you literally, your adrenaline is burned out, like you're tired. You feel worn out when the movie's over.
Yeah.
Now, maybe if we would have watched it with a huge crowd or watched it at home where you can kind of chit-chat through some of the other parts and whatever, then 2 hours and 15 minutes doesn't feel that long. But I would say cut 45 minutes off. This is an all-timer. Would be an absolute fantastic, recommend every time slasher movie. But with that extra 45 minutes tacked on, I'm going to have to say...
hard. Like, you can't just watch that at Halloween time.
Yeah, like I said, with a bunch of people over. Anyway, we're over time. I would give this movie, let's see, 7 out of 10 severed heads.
Why can't you just stop stealing my ratings?
Just give it your rating. Come on,
All right, I'm going to also give it 7 out of 10 flaming clowns.
Flaming clowns.
That's funny.
All right, so basically you got a 7 for this movie. But hey, it could have been a 9. Just chop 45 minutes off. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of The Kid Stays in the Podcast. We'll be back next week with a review of Black Panther. Wakanda Forever.
That's really exciting. We love you guys. Thank you for listening. Goodbye. Follow us on Instagram at The Kid in the Pic and on RogueMediaNetwork.com.
Until next time.
This has been a Rogue Media podcast.